They had everything: the customers, the technology, the money. Then, one decision changed everything. Think about your favorite burger for a second. Got it? Now, is it from McDonald's? Statistically speaking, probably not. You can likely name 5 places right now that taste significantly better. Yet, McDonald's serves over 1% of the entire global population every single day. They've literally fed billions, while restaurants with objectively superior food go bankrupt every single year.
So how did a company with a product that honestly isn't considered the absolute best achieve such unquestionable, enduring success? Like I said, they had everything: the customers, the technology, the money. But it was one very specific decision that changed everything.
Welcome to Market Mind Lab. In this explainer, we aren't just going to read off a dry timeline of business facts. We're going to dig deeper. We want to uncover what people actually believed, the assumptions they made, and the hidden psychological architecture behind the choices that permanently altered business history.
Let's dive right into this central paradox. How does a company sell so much of a product that isn't even the best in its category? The answer isn't just about beef and buns. As you'll see, smart people make this choice every single day because of a literal masterpiece of psychological warfare and a completely hidden real estate empire.
Act 1. The impossible situation. To really understand how they became this unstoppable force, we have to rewind back to 1940. Richard and Maurice McDonald were running a highly successful barbecue drive-in out in California. That was their whole brand. But when they sat down and looked at their actual sales data, they realized something absolutely shocking. A massive 80% of their sales were coming from just hamburgers, not the barbecue, just the burgers. So based on this one insight, they made a completely unthinkable decision. They literally closed down their thriving, successful business for 3 straight months to completely re-engineer the whole shebang. When they finally reopened, they introduced what they called the Speedy Service System. They fired all their car hobs, they threw away every piece of silverware, they completely rebuilt their kitchen to function exactly like a Henry Ford assembly line. They prioritized absolute volume, aggressive speed, and rock-bottom prices above everything else. This was the birth of McDonaldization, a systemic process that permanently changed modern society. But for this system to truly explode globally, it needed a catalyst. Enter a milkshake mixer salesman named Ray Kroc.
Act 2. The critical decision.
Ray Kroc walked into that San Bernardino restaurant and didn't just see a burger joint, he saw a biological engine. But despite his grand vision to franchise this all across America, Kroc was actually facing a massive financial crisis. He was making only a tiny, completely unsustainable royalty on every burger sold. He was nearly bankrupt. And that is exactly when his CFO, a guy named Harry Sonborn, delivered a paradigm-shifting piece of advice. He said, "You're not in the hamburger business, you're in the real estate business." This single insight completely transformed the company's entire survival strategy. Kroc began aggressively buying up the land under every single new restaurant location. Fast forward to today, and that real estate empire is worth $40 billion. But here's the catch. This wasn't just about cash flow. It was about absolute control. By owning the physical land, McDonald's gained total, unquestionable authority over their franchise operators. If an operator deviates even slightly from the strict McDonald's system, they don't just lose their franchise license, they lose their physical lease. They're out on the street.
Act 3. The hidden psychology. That absolute operational control I just mentioned, it guarantees a perfectly predictable experience for the human brain. You see, your brain is an incredibly energy-intensive organ, and it's constantly looking for ways to conserve power. This is where cognitive load comes in. Because a Big Mac tastes absolutely identical whether you buy it in Beijing or Chicago, your brain knows exactly what to expect. This consistency drastically drops your cognitive load. The consumer literally bypasses critical, energy-heavy thinking altogether, relying on what's called the availability heuristic to make the absolute easiest, most familiar choice possible.
But they don't just rely on familiarity, they actively hijack your senses. Their visual branding is highly weaponized. The color red actually stimulates appetite and creates a subconscious sense of urgency, while yellow evokes feelings of happiness. Furthermore, their ventilation systems are strategically designed to pump the scent of their fries directly out onto the street. This hits your olfactory bulb, which is directly linked to memory and emotion in the brain. By the time you even see those golden arches, your brain has already started releasing dopamine. You aren't just making a conscious choice, you're fulfilling a neurological prediction.
Act 4. The consequences.
So by 2015, this seemingly bulletproof psychological empire actually began to fracture. Suffering from a status quo bias against newer, more authentic competitors, customers were only ordering the cheap items, and sales fell globally. McDonald's had a huge problem. How do we get people to spend more money without triggering psychological friction? Their brilliant solution was the self-serve kiosk, an absolute masterclass in choice architecture. They shifted the locus of control directly to the customer. Cheaper value meals are now buried under multiple taps, while high-margin signature items absolutely dominate the screen with succulent imagery and, crucially, no dollar signs. Because brain imaging shows that parting with money activates physical pain centers in the brain. Hiding the price removes the psychological pain of upgrading your meal.
This visual architecture also relies heavily on something called the decoy effect. When you use a kiosk, you'll almost always see a very expensive premium burger positioned right next to a standard item. That really expensive item acts as a psychological anchor. The moment you see it, the classic, slightly marked up Big Mac instantly feels like a smart economical choice. Your brain totally justifies the purchase because, well, it feels like a bargain compared to the decoy right next to it.
They also have this brilliant method for combating cognitive dissonance. You know, that little ping of guilt we all feel when we know we're eating junk food. It's called the health halo effect. Simply by offering a side salad or a bottle of water on the menu, they provide psychological relief. The crazy part? You don't even have to actually order the salad. Just knowing a healthy option is available mitigates your guilt, giving you subconscious permission to go ahead and order the fries.
Act 5, the lesson. So, what can businesses and frankly us as consumers really learn from this investigation? The most profound realization is that sheer convenience and predictable engineering will almost always defeat raw quality. And this programming? It begins incredibly early in life through the Happy Meal habit loop. By pairing a known comfort food with the unknown excitement of a mystery toy, they create a massive dopamine double hit. Over time, this repetitive loop forms a deep neurological bond in a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. Decades later, adults aren't returning for culinary flavor. They're returning to satisfy a deeply ingrained nostalgic loop.
Ultimately, it all comes down to cognitive fluency. That's our deep human preference for things that are easy to process, understand, and interact with. McDonald's ultimate product is not a hamburger. What they are actually selling is a perfectly engineered, frictionless market experience. They have taken the simple act of eating and turned it into a structural result of market innovation.
You don't necessarily eat there because it's the best food available. You eat there because your brain has been methodically trained to love the ease, the predictability, and the absolutely frictionless system they've built over decades. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Next time you're driving down the road and you catch sight of those golden arches glowing in the distance, ask yourself, are you actually hungry? Or is your brain just following its programming?